All right, good afternoon, folks, and thanks for being here today for this afternoon's session in the MiEnviro training series. My name is Caitlin DeVries. I'm from Eagle's Environmental Support Division. I'm the Air Quality Outreach Specialist, and I'll be moderating this afternoon's session. Today's session is on emissions testing, submitting your plans and your results to the Air Quality Division. Before we get into that content today, I just wanted to cover some quick housekeeping items. So first, I want to let you know that all lines are muted and will remain muted throughout the training session today. I also want to let you know that we are recording this training and we will post that recording to our webpage, which will show you how to get to later on. And if you attended or if you registered, we will be sending you out the direct link to the recording as well once that recording gets processed. It should just take a couple of days to get that ready. At the latest, it'll come out at the end of the week. Along with that recording, you'll also get access to the slides that we used for today's presentation. That way you can go back and re-review the information. If you had to step out early, you can catch up on that information or share it with those who may not have been able to attend today's training. And last thing I wanted to share with you is that we are taking questions, and if you have a question, you can go ahead and put those in the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen in your Zoom toolbar. We will do our best to get to as many questions as we can throughout today's training, but please note if we don't get to your question, we will be following up with you directly after the session. It may take a little bit to get back to you. We have been getting a lot of questions, which is great. We definitely welcome those questions. But we will get back to you if we don't directly answer your question here during this afternoon's session. So with that, housekeeping items taken care of, I'm going to introduce your primary presenter that we have today. Today's primary presenter is Dave Bowman. He is an environmental quality analyst out of our Gaylord District office. He's back for this afternoon's session. We also are lucky to have Jeremy Howe from our technical programs unit on to help answer questions when we get to those as well. So Jeremy is here, and we've got Dave, Amy, and Corey from our data applications unit here if we need them. So thanks for that. And Dave, when you are ready, I'm going to pass it over to you to get us into today's agenda.
Excellent. Thank you, Caitlin. I appreciate it. Starting off with today's agenda, we're going to begin discussing the submissions that you're going to use for emissions measurement, then an overview of the basic process for submitting the compliance reports and where the requirements come from. And finally, and most importantly, I'm going to demonstrate the processes live in the MiEnviro Portal today. Next slide, please. If you've completed your emissions inventory and review and emissions reporting, you've already have some familiarity with how to submit test plans and reports because the process is very familiar. For those of you that are new to submissions, this is the starting point for all of your reporting to AQD and all of your reporting for testing. The dashboard functional area is going to break down your submissions into different timelines and different areas, as we discussed this morning. If you didn't attend that class this morning, please go back and look at it, and it'll help make a lot of this. This fits into that exactly the same way. If you're missing any of these testing requirements, such as submitting a test plan or submitting your final test plan, please reach out as soon as possible to your district inspector and at Eagle Air so that we can make sure we get those put into your dashboard so that you can actually submit those tests to AQD to show compliance. Test plans, final test reports, and VE tests are submitted using the portal, and they're going to be routed to the correct AQD staff for processing. Your permit may specify that you're required to submit a copy to both the TPU supervisor and the district supervisor. Now using MiEnviro Portal, you're going to submit one time, and it's going to be sent to all the required AQD staff. You're no longer going to send an email with an attachment, upload it to the AQD website, mail copies in. All of it's taking place on the MiEnviro Portal. It's a one-stop shop for notifying AQD of your tests and the results. For those items that require a responsible official to submit, which traditionally we would require the EQP 5736 form, commonly referred to as the ROP certification form, that's also going to be handled in MiEnviro Portal. Just like we discussed this morning with other submissions to AQD, the basic rule to follow is if you've submitted test results in the past and you had your responsible official sign that form, that responsible official is going to have to click the final submission when you send the results back into AQD. Okay. I do want to bring up that when AQD acknowledges a submitted document, that is not the same as approving that document. For example, when AQD acknowledges your final test report submission, they are saying that the test review process has been completed, not that you are in compliance with any of your emission limits. If any violations are found, they will be handled through your district inspector or through the TPU staff, and we'll go through a different process. Okay. Next slide, please. The process and the reasoning for emissions testing has not changed. The only change is how you're going to submit your test plan and your final test reports to the AQD. Your permit to install or your Title V renewable operating permit tells you the rules, the regulations, the testing, the frequency that's required. That is your document that is going to direct you to what you're required to test and what your limits are for making that test. The basic process is going to be the same that it used to be. 30 or more days before your scheduled testing date, the company is going to submit a test plan to AQD for review and approval. AQD staff are going to review and create the protocol acceptance letter. When the submission is acknowledged, your letter will be available to you in the documents functional area. During the test, a technical programs unit emission measurement staff and a district inspector may be present during the testing. Each is going to create a test observation evaluation report that upon completion, you'll also have a hard copy of that or a digital copy of that in your documents functional area. No more than 60 days after the completion of your test, your final test report will be submitted via the MiEnviro portal. Your permit may state that you are required to submit a copy to both AQD Technical Programs Unit and the district supervisor. By submitting this in MiEnviro, you are meeting that requirement. So it's a single submission now. Okay. Sorry, I lost my spot here. During the review process, this could potentially be a little bit longer than you would think. In the past, you would submit your final test report, and you may not hear back from AQD unless there's a problem with it. One of the things that MiEnviro allows you to do, and I'll demonstrate this when we go into MiEnviro, is you can see where your submission is at in the process. You can see that if it's still being processed, if it's being acknowledged. So things that used to just occur and you never, you sent it to us and then you forgot about it, you're at least now going to be able to see that this is still in process, and you'll be able to look at it. If it's a month later, 6 weeks later, don't worry about that. The important thing is you submitted it on time. We'll review it and we'll get back with you if there's any issues. Next slide, please. So are there any questions about the basic process, anything we've covered to this point before we go live into MiEnviro?
There are questions that have come in, but I think you will cover most of them once we get into the system, Dave. So I will let you keep going through the content and we will get to those questions that have been submitted so far.
Appreciate that. All right, you should be seeing my UAT cloud right now for
We sure
ROP
can.
test site.
It looks great.
Excellent. So I'm currently logged in as an external user. I'm logged in as if I am the responsible official for this test site, Zulu 0005. And I'm going to walk everybody through the process that we just went over, from submitting your test plan to completing your test, to submitting your final test report. So you're going to see across the top, there are different tabs that are available to have different information. On the left-hand side, I'm going to refer to these as functional areas. So right now I'm in the functional area of the dashboard. When I first would log in, it would show up as under the priority tab, which just means that in this case, I have something that's in draft that's being worked on. If I move next to the upcoming tab, these are submissions that have due dates associated with them. And then I move into the as needed tab, which is going to be the actions that don't have a scheduled date associated with them, but they're things that I'm going to have to go back and use, such as submit test report submittal and my test plan. And then I'll briefly cover in drafts are going to be things that I have started, but I don't have submitted to AQD yet. We are not using within the air quality division the to be signed. And then in the final and in process, this is where you're going to be able to see the status of any of the test plans or the test reports that you have submitted to us. So if you'd already had submitted a final test report, you'd be able to see that it's an in-process schedule down here and follow that through as AQD processes that. So I'm going to go back to as needed. First thing I have, my permit states that I'm going to have to do some sort of air emissions monitoring test to prove compliance. So I'm going to go down to the air quality test plan submittal, and I'm going to select begin. This is going to begin a form entry. So if you hear it referred to as you have to submit a form, we're not asking you to go to a website, find a form, fill it out, and then upload it. The form that's being asked to be filled out is this submission here. So it opens up. I'm going to then select begin form entry. And this opens up the form that we're referring to submit. And anything that has a red asterisk next to it is a required field. So it's going to ask for a series of pieces of information that's going to help make sure that our test plan is submitted and we know AQD knows who we're going to contact at the site. So I'm just going to begin by filling in the information. Email information. Next piece of information is we want to know who is the point of contact person from your test company. We understand that that might change because of personnel moving around when the company comes to actually perform your emissions measurement, but fill out who you believe it's going to be right away. Very actually type the phone number. There we go. And then an email. Once I have all of our contact information, I'm then going to move to the next section, which is where I have to input the test details. If you notice, when you move from section to section, this little area up here for save progress is going to automatically save the progress for you. And it'll tell you this was saved a few seconds ago, or if it takes a few minutes ago. This is going to be a nice tool for you as you're filling this out. If somebody calls you away from your desk, this is going to save the progress. You don't have to come back in and start at the very beginning and go through it. You're going to be able to put in the details as you get them until it's, go home at the end of the day, come back the next day, finish up, whatever the case may be, so that you don't have to restart and you can save the information as you move along. So our test start date, again, red asterisk means it's a mandatory field. So for the test date, I can either enter it manually or I can use the little calendar to submit it. Remember, we want these submitted at least 30 days in advance, so it gives AQD emissions measurement personnel enough time to review your protocol and do the acceptance letter. So I'm going to say that my test is going to be on the February 11th. Reason for the test. Is this the first time I am testing for this pollutant or running this test on an emission unit? Maybe I'm a brand new source, or is this a repeat test? So whichever one it is, you're going to select the box. And then you'll move on to the next. So in this case, if it was an initial, I've never had a performance test before. So in that case, I'm just going to write none. If it's a repeat, I'm going to put the month and year of my last test. So I'm going to say that this is a repeat, and the last time we ran this was in February of 2024. You'll notice that the permit to install or your ROP is not a mandatory field. You can use the down arrow. You can select that if you want. It's not necessary. Next, you're going to select your test type. Are you doing a stack test? Are you performing a RATA? Are you a source that has enough different types of test requirements that you have to do both? As you select the box for which type of test, it's going to automatically add a table for you to fill out. And you can have both a stack test table and a RATA table to go in for the same submission. All right. So for test purposes or training purposes today, we're just going to have it as a stack test. If I wasn't going to have a stack test or a RATA, but it was going to be an other, then I get a free-form box to be able to put up here. So maybe I was going to have to do a method 9, if I could type. And I could just put that in there, and that notifies us the type of test that you're going to do. For our purposes, like I said, I'm going to indicate that I'm doing a stack test. So there's two different ways that you can enter all of this information in. You can enter it on this table as is provided here in the box, or you can download this template into an Excel spreadsheet and then re-upload it after you have done filled in all the blocks. You can re-upload it and it will come back and fill in here automatically. The one thing to note is if you are a person that likes to work in Excel and you don't like these types of sheets, so you download this template, you cannot change any of the column headings. If you change column headings or try to make this your own version, it will not upload correctly and you'll end up having to do your work over again. For our purposes today, I'm just going to go ahead and put in the information through the table. I recommend when you do this that you click on the full screen. And what this will do is this will give you the entirety of it and make it less likely that you run into problems with missing a piece of information somewhere. So on your emissions unit, this is going to be tied back to your equipment inventory that you are doing on an annual basis. So this is going to have a drop down with the different emission units that you can pre-select. So I'm going to say that I have to test EU base coat. Methods is a free form box, so I can just type in whichever federal reference method that I'm going to use. My pollutant, I'm going to say that I am looking for particulate matter. And I understand that that probably doesn't go to a coding booth, but I just want to use this as a training tool. I start typing in particulate matter, and I'm going to get the different options that are available. If I abbreviated particulate matter, PM, as a lot of us do, I'm going to still get the PM's going to come up, allowing me to select through there. So whatever your pollutant happens to be, start typing it and your options will come up. Okay, back to the PM. Your pollutant limit, it wants a valid number. Now, just the number goes in here. So it could be 0.07, it could be 1, whatever the case may be, you put in just the numerics that go to your pollutant limit. And then in your unit of measurement, you're going to use the down arrow, and then you're going to select the appropriate unit of measurement. So is it a 0.07 pounds per hour, or is it a 0.07 pounds per million BTU? Whatever the limit is that is in your permit, that's what you're going to input into this field. And then it's going to ask you, what are you subject to? We use this to help make sure that we're referencing the correct federal reference methods that apply to your limit, as well as you might have a very specific instance where you have a something that we don't always use. We're not accustomed to a specific regulation or a MACT that applies to you. So this is going to help us make sure that we are tailoring your protocol acceptance letter to the correct to make it correct for you. So in this case, I'm just going to say that it's a Michigan air pollution control rule. Now, a lot of times you're going to run tests for multiple pollutants or multiple units of measure or multiple emission units. All you have to do is go over to the Add a New Row button, select that, and it's going to bring up another row for you to input. And I'm just going to go back through and fill out the information. And 10, I'm going to say that this is a 1 pound per million BTU, and that in this case, maybe it goes to a different regulation. So I'm going to, just for argument, for training's sake, I'm going to say that that is applicable under 40 CFR Part 60, Subpart Quad A. Once I have all of my individual pollutants and emission limits and what we're going to be testing for, I'm going to exit out of the full screen, and it just stays right here in my form. Next question that I'm looking at is, am I requesting any method deviations? In this case, I'm not going to, but if I was, it's going to automatically add a box, a mandatory box for you to tell the TPU emissions personnel what that deviation is that you're requesting. If you are requesting operational deviations, like for maybe you have to run in a very specific way during the test in order to be able to prove that you're demonstrating compliance with your emissions, but it's not how you would normally operate, then you would explain that to us here. I'm not in this case going to request any of those deviations, so I'm going to select no. The next thing that it asks me to do is to attach my test plan. I can drag and drop the file here, or I can choose the file to upload. And I'm just going to use test plan that I've created, a document. Next is my review section. All I am doing is reviewing the information that I have input into this form so far. I'm making sure I don't have typos. Do I have the right email addresses, the right phone numbers? Is my testing information correct? Is the right emission unit been selected? Is the right pollutant, the limits, et cetera, being selected? If all of that is okay, I'm going to go to the next section and certify and submit. If I had a problem within this, all I would do is go back to over on the left-hand side here. Say I needed to edit my test details. I would select test details. It takes me back to that section. I can make any edits that I need made. I could add a row. I can say, for example, I forgot I actually am going to have 3 tests being done on this because I also have a pound per 1,000 pound dry that has to be made, and that is from a consent order that my site has. So now that I've made sure that I've done all of the proper editing, I'm going to go scroll back down. I'm going to review again. Going back, making sure that all of the data is correct. I have all of my information that's required. Next section is to certify and submit. Everything's good. I'm just going to submit the form. At this point, I can print a copy of the form. I can print a confirmation that it's been submitted. I can view it again, or I can just return to the MiEnviro Portal home. In this case, I'm just going to return to the MiEnviro Portal home. So before I break this for some questions, I do want to point out the only people that can submit that can complete this submission on behalf of the company are people that the company has listed as an authorized user for their company. So for those of you that historically have had your testing company send the protocol to Jeremy for review, you're going to either have to give them permission to access your company, or you're going to have them send it to you and you'll upload it yourself. So are there any questions about the test plan submittal?
Yeah, Dave, there are some questions, and one of them you just answered right there about if a if a test company can submit on behalf of the company. It's like you were reading the questions that were coming in. Um, so yeah, so there are some questions in here. So I'm just gonna start kind of with some of the more basic ones. So some companies used to submit a cover letter with their test plans before. Are cover letters required for a test plan submission?
Jeremy might have better guidance on that. I I don't want to answer for his staff.
No, they're not required, but typically it's part of the PDF that they upload of the original test plan from the company.
Okay.
It's not required though, to answer the question.
Perfect. Thanks for that clarification, Jeremy. Um, yeah, keeping along with those. So I did just want to remind everybody that we are live in the portal now. So if you've submitted test protocols before we went live December 16, and you have tested or are testing soon, and you have results here in the next couple of months, those will be required to be submitted here in the portal. Dave will show you how to upload results in a little bit here when we get to that, but I did just want to remind everyone of that we are live, and that is the expectation. So keeping kind of just on the test plan, there were a couple questions in here on who even needs to submit to do a test. And I did just want to cover that for those of you who may have been following along on all of our MiEnviro series. If you're required to do a performance test like this, it will be either outlined in your permit. You will have a request from AQD staff requesting that. So either a letter required by a consent order, perhaps, or if it's required by some other federal type of regulation. So you will know if you need to test something, because air quality staff will have asked. So Dave, some of these other questions, if you could go back into the form that you were filling out, I just want to stick with that form while you had it up.
Okay.
So while you're bringing that up, couple questions came in about what you would select for something like if you were also testing for a capture efficiency or a transfer efficiency. Would you select the other test for that rather than our two set boxes for stack test and RADA?
I would kick that one to Jeremy as well. He's going to be the guy that reviews those, and I'm not sure how he wants to see that.
So capture efficiency is one of the units of measure in the drop down there, Dave.
Okay.
And then destruction efficiency as well. I don't know if we got transfer in there. Let's keep on going. It's percent.
There you go. Percent
Yeah,
DE,
and
percent
C.
CE.
So we are still working on that list. That list we had to populate. The one for the pollutant names came with the software, so I will add that to the list.
In the meantime, if they need to do that test before we can get the list updated, do you want them to just add that as an other with the description? So in this case, if they had to do transfer,
Yeah,
they
they
can
could
select
do,
other.
but they could do other, but actually they could probably just fill in most of it and then down below,
Okay.
scroll down when you're requesting the deviations.
Ah, understood.
Yeah, that'd probably be the spot for that. Plus, we'll have a PDF of the original plan. So if it's not completely coherent, then it would be right in there for reference. Or you can call or email, that's
Those
always
are,
there
yeah.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as you were finding out here, Jeremy is a wealth of knowledge. So always good to contact him and his group in the technical programs unit for your questions on stack testing, because Jeremy's your guy for that stuff. So sticking Dave here on this, there was a couple questions that came in about RADAs in particular. So if you could just click that box and show that. There was a question in here about the column that was talking about methods. So the question wanted to know if in that column, do you reference the test method or the performance specification or both?
Just the test methods.
Just the test method. Okay, thanks for that. And for those of you who are wondering what a RADA is, it stands for Relative Accuracy Test Audit. And again, you would know if you need to perform that test, as it would be outlined in your permit. So if you are like scratching your head going, I don't know what that is, it probably doesn't impact you or your facility that you would need to do a test like that. But good questions coming in on those things. Last question on here, and I'm going to read it as it's written. So if I'm misunderstanding the question here, it's still on your methods there. It was talking about, do we have to list methods 1 through 4, or is that assumed? Jeremy, that might be a good question for you, since you know all of the method numbers much better than I for sure do.
You have to list any and all methods used to compare against that limit. So 1 through,
Perfect.
so 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4,
Okay.
whatever it is. So certain regs allow certain methods and don't allow other ones. So
Perfect. And when in doubt and you have questions on what you should be entering in there, you can always reach out and ask those questions too. So, Dave, I'm gonna answer one more question here and I'll have you jump back into the content. Just
Okay.
some more questions in here about who can submit these test plans and if the responsible official needs to submit them for ROP sources. Again, our requirements for that submissions hasn't changed. In the past, if you're a responsible official, signed that certification form, wet signature, and you had to get that to mail that in, your responsible official still needs to submit that and go in here with their own account and click that submit button. You can get it all ready to go. If you're a third-party testing group that is preparing all of this as well, you can get everything ready to go up until that certify and submit. And then you're going to want that responsible official to go ahead and submit that this form, because it's an electronic form, just like your paper copy would have been now an electronic version to the air quality division. So with that, Dave, I'm going to let you take it back over.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Exit out of the form. So this would go through the process currently because I didn't complete and resubmit. So right now, the one that we were just working on that we reopened to demonstrate a couple of things, it's now showing that's in draft instead of having been submitted. Okay, so I wanted to point this out because if you were going to have your third-party company put in the information for you, your company still has to be the people that press the submit button. So what they would do is they would send you an email or a phone call or however they wanted to communicate with you that would say, hey, Dave, I've got all of your test plan submittals submitted. It's ready for you to do the final submission. Log into either in your priorities or into your drafts tab, and you can continue and do the submission. Okay, so it can be found in both of those places, the priority tab because it's a draft, it's things you're working on actively, and in the draft because it's a draft. All right, so let's say we've submitted everything. AQD has processed it. We'll receive some notifications either via email or internally into MiEnviro Portal. And we're going to be looking for where our protocol acceptance letter is. So in the past, those letters used to get emailed out by Jeremy and his team. Now they're going to be housed in MiEnviro for you. So once you see that your test plan submittal has been acknowledged, it's complete, you're going to navigate to the documents functional area. And you'll see all of the documentation that is associated with your source. So if you had an MAP approval, it's going to be in here. I want to point out, and this is something that's relatively new to a lot of us in AQD. And in the last year plus that I've been testing this, it can be kind of frustrating. This is what's called a sticky filter, meaning whatever I type in here to filter, when I exit the program and I come back later, that is still going to be there. So if I had been searching for MAP documents, I typed that in the filter, I found them, I've logged off, I go in next week, I'm looking for my protocol acceptance letter, and I look in my documents and it stymies me because there's nothing there but an MAP. Remember, if you can't find the document that you know should be in this area, look across the top and figure out which one of these still has a sticky filter and remove it. And then you're going to see all of your documents. So here we have the air quality test plan approval letter. I can either click on it and it'll open it up. I can view the full PDF of it. I can download it and print it. However you want to do that, keep a copy of this handy, because when the time comes for you to submit your final test report, we're going to ask you to submit this back to us again. All right, so I'm going to go back to the documents list. Again, in your documents functional area is where you're going to find your test plan approval letters. So if you remember from the slides, I talked about how you can see the test observation reports that are going to be completed by the technical programs unit emissions measurement personnel, by your district inspector. When those evaluations are complete, you are going to see a copy of those in your documents as well. So in this case, this is an air quality test observation report. I'm going to click it up. This is going to be the report that the district inspector did of the day. So this is going to cover the operational information that they observed. For the technical programs unit emissions measurement folks, with their version of this, is you're going to see data that's very specific to the testing itself. But you're able to see both of those in this area as it relates to your site. Okay. So we're going to go back to the dashboard. We've did our test. We did our test plan submittal. It was approved. We showed where you find the protocol document. We've conducted our test. Everybody showed up. The test was successful. 60 days has gone by, and I am now going to be submitting my final test report. So I'm going to navigate back to the As Needed tab within the dashboard functional area, and I am going to scroll down until I find the air quality test report submittal. And I'm going to select Begin. Again, this is going to open up the form. So if you hear references to the form, this is what we're talking about. We're going to ask for some information again. Who was our facility contact? Who you submitted with the original test plan may not have been who was the contact for that day. So whoever the contact is for this specific test report, you fill in that information. 628. And I'm going to put in an email address. My browser saved the information from the test company. Yours may not. So whoever is your company information on your final test report, make sure that information is what's uploaded into this spot. And then we're going to move to the test details. When was your actual test start date? Originally, we said we were going to start our test on February 11th. Anybody that's been involved with testing over the years knows that things can happen operationally. You can have a turbine can go down. You can be at a power plant when suddenly the grid pulls you offline and you can't test. So we're asking you, what was your actual test start date? You can use the calendar function and just submit something, or you can put it in manually. We're going to say that in our case, we managed to do our testing all in one day. What was the reason for the test? Was it an initial? What is a repeat performance? I believe we're doing a repeat test. You'll notice that the permit is not a required field, but if you wanted to add it, you just do the drop down arrow and you select whichever permits were applicable to your testing. And then you select your test type. Did you do a stack test? Did you do a RADA? Was it an other type of test? And the same window is going to open up with other for you to have a mandatory field to input information. If it's the stack test, it's going to open up a form to fill in, the same as it did before, only this information now is specific to the test that took place. And the same thing if you were going to if you had to do a RADA, it's going to upload a RADA form. We'll cover that in just a second. Same as before, you can download this into as an Excel template, fill out the information on your desktop, and then re-upload this back. But if you are folks that like to work in Excel, just bear in mind, if you start changing the headers, you're not going to be able to upload the information back in. All right. If you're entering this directly to the form, I recommend you start at full screen. You can notice there are no rows to select, so we're going to start by adding a row. And I'm just going to start doing the drop-down boxes, very similar to what we did when we uploaded the actual test plan. I'm going to say the methods that we used. We did 1 through 4, and we did 21. Why not? Our pollutant, same. It's a type ahead. We tested for particulate matter. Our pollutant limit was 0.07. This is numbers only. Our unit of measurement was pounds per hour. And this one was subject to a Michigan air pollution control rule. Now we want to see what are the results of each of your runs. So I'm just going to select some numbers. And then it's going to want the 3-run average. This is the information that should be already in your final test report. You're just putting it into this form. This is going to help the emissions measurement personnel verify that your test is a pass. This is your test data. So this is the same data that we're going to be reporting up to the US EPA. So instead of relying on one of the AQD staff to input and potentially fat finger an input, this is your data. We want you to own it. So we're asking you to input all this. So I'm going to say this was our 3-run average. If I have multiple tests that I ran, I just add the additional lines out of it. 5, particulate matter. That was a 1. That was a pound per million BTU. That was out of our consent order. And we found that 0.05, 0.05, 0.05. Once I have all of the information that pertains to my stack test, I can go ahead and I exit out of my full screen. If I had ran the RADA test as well, I select RADA and I scroll down and I'm going to do the exact same. I am going to I'm going to add rows as are necessary, and I'm just going to fill in the information across the bottom of it. All right, so I would go to full screen. I'm going to add. We did a RADA for EU base coat. We're just going to say whatever the method was that we used. We were looking at particulate matter. Our unit of measure was pounds per 1,000 pounds wet. Part 60, no. Say we did a part 75. Our accuracy was 5%. Our tentative accuracy was 7.5%. And I would just add rows as necessary for each of the tests that I ran as a part of that RATA. And then I exit the full screen and I just continue scrolling down. Were there method deviations? Now, in my original test plan, I didn't request any deviations, but maybe during the test, something showed that you had to do a deviation on the time of testing, and you got approval through Jeremy to be able to do that, or through the DS, whoever had to make that approval. This is where you would list that. So this potentially could be different from what you put in your initial test plan when you submitted it. In our case, we're going to say there were no method deviations. There were no operational deviations. And now we're going to have to attach a couple of different items. You can drag and drop the files, or you can just choose the file to upload. So I'm going to choose the test plan. I'm going to open that. My test plan approval letter. I'm just going to say there's the protocol letter. And I'm going to attach my final test report. We're asking that you submit all of these documents so that they're all located in one space, so that when the testing emissions or technical programs unit personnel review, when the district inspector reviews, everything's in one spot. It helps us make the compliance determination much faster than if we have to hunt around and ask for different documents. So these are required to be attached in order to submit the report. Once that's done, I'm going to go to review. And all I'm doing again is I'm reviewing the information that I submitted on the test and the test facility and the test company information. I'm reviewing all the information that was pertinent to the test that was submitted. I have the documents that are required. And the next thing I'm going to do is sign this. This report is required to be submitted by the responsible official if you're a Title V facility. At this point, I could save my progress. If I'm not the RO, if I am just the environmental manager, I've input all the information for my responsible official. I've saved the progress, and I'm now going to get in touch with my responsible official, and I'm going to say, this is all ready. Everything's uploaded. Please go in and sign and submit the document. What this allows you to do is have your responsible official, could be anywhere on planet Earth, as long as they have an internet connection, they can submit this right from that location. So the days of having to track them down to sign the ROP certification form, the notification of compliance form, all of that, that is all taken care of when your responsible official answers these questions, enters their password, and signs and submits. That is assuming that they know the answers to their questions.
While you're typing that in, Dave, I'm just gonna respond to a couple questions that are still coming in here since you're at the certificate or you're at the submittal portion here. So again, just to remind people, Dave's using the term responsible official a lot. So if you're a Title V source, you're familiar with the term responsible official, you have one. They are required to sign that certification form, or were required to sign that paper certification form to submit things to us. So them clicking the submit button is essentially them signing that form and submitting it to us, to the Air Quality Division. If you're not a Title V source, you don't have a responsible official identified for purposes of Title V like that. You may have somebody who signs all your paperwork, who submits that, maybe you as the environmental manager. So if you're not a Title V source, you can still have someone submit this as long as they have the correct rights in the system to do so. So when we're saying a responsible official has to submit, we're talking about Title V. So I just wanted to make that a little bit more hopefully clear to people, because our rules for that haven't changed. Title V sources, if you had to have a certified submittal from a responsible official, that is the same. It looks like you got your password sorted out, so I'll let you take it back.
Are there any questions before I sign this and submit it? Are there any questions about submitting the air quality test report?
So some of the questions that did come in about submitting the test report. So people were wondering if they got notified when something had been submitted to us, or if they got notified if an approval letter was given out by the Air Quality Division. Could you just talk about when or
Yes.
if they would get notified?
There is within MiEnviro Portal, we have two different ways of notifying you. You can be notified only via the portal, or you can be notified via email and the portal. And not every action is going to have an email notification. What we didn't want to do was overwhelm people with notifications of actions within MiEnviro Portal because it would get to the point where you're just like, you create a rule and it goes into the trash bin and you never ever read them. So I'll show you where to find where to find notifications within the portal, because you can also set it up, like I said, you can have it set up so that you only receive notifications in the portal or email and notifications in the portal. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and sign this and submit it. Again, I can print my submission, I can print the confirmation, I can view it, or I can just return back to the MiEnviro portal. To look for notifications that you've received, you go over to the notifications functional area, and you're going to see the notifications that you have that are new, that haven't been read, the notifications that have been read, and then notifications that are in the trash. And through all of the testing that I've done, I've never seen where you can delete completely out of MiEnviro Portal a notification. So they stay here. So I can open this. This one is to notify us that I submitted a NESHAP compliance form earlier. So if I delete this, I want to delete the notification, it goes over to the trash. So if I select trash and then I select a notification, I can remove selected from the trash, and all it does is it moves it over into my red file. So your notifications are going to stay here. And sometimes there's a lag as well between when you click submit and how soon you're going to get a notification. This morning when I was doing the training on submitting compliance reports, I had submitted 3 different compliance reports, and 20 minutes later, I got email notifications that those compliance reports were submitted. So there's going to be a lag between how often your email server downloads email to your account. There's a lag from how long it takes for you to click the submit button to get all the way through where MiEnviro Portal takes it from pre-processing to in process. So if you click on something, don't expect an immediate notification that it's been submitted, but you should get a notification within 30 minutes to an hour. Not everything is set up, like I said earlier, to give a notification for every specific thing. So you can, if you think you're supposed to be getting notified for something and you're not seeing those notifications, reach out to your district inspector or at Eagle Air, because there may be some bug in the system that's preventing those notifications from coming along. If you're not sure where that is in the process and you've submitted and you want to know where, has it been completed, you can go into the dashboard functional area to the in process tab, and you can look and see, I have an air quality test report submittal that's in process. It was received by AQD on the 14th of January. And so I know that they've got it now. 6 weeks go by and I go back in and I see that this is no longer here. It's no longer in process. If there was any documentation that needed to be submitted or that was going to be sent back to me on that, I would look for that in the documents functional area, making sure I don't have any of these sticky filters on, and I could find that document. I could find it by date and time it was created. I could find it by what I submitted it under. Was it an MAP? Was it a test plan, etc.? So, any other questions that we have about the test plan or the final test report submittals?
Yeah, Dave, there are a couple other questions in here, and I'm going to read some of them. And if we're not getting to the root of these people's questions, please follow up in the question and answer. So, question about the ability to upload a PDF package rather than uploading separate documents. So you had showed a couple spots where people could drag and drop or upload in there. Do they have to upload them separately, or can it be in one PDF package?
The way that MiEnviro Portal works, it has to be individually. So each of those three have a requirement to have something uploaded to them.
Perfect. Then another question about submitting results if there was no test plan acceptance letter received. I'm not sure exactly, maybe this is a
So
question. Oh, go ahead. Yep.
I think I know where they're leading at, and I'll defer to Jeremy on how he wants them to upload something. Sometimes there's a case where a source might not have gotten the letter in to do the test. So I defer to Jeremy.
Those are pretty rare, so I guess they should get a hold of me. Just go with that.
Totally fair. Air quality staff is still open for phone calls, emails, questions. So, some of these things, if you're feeling like it's not fitting directly into one of the forms here in the system, you can always reach out and ask those questions. We want to make sure that we're getting you set up on the right form, the right way, and filled out to make sure that we're meeting the needs that you guys have to get us the information that we're asking for. So, Dave, with that, I'll have you get back to the content. There are still some questions coming in, but we'll circle back to a few of these after we get through some more content.
Excellent. So the other thing that I wanted to demonstrate today was in some sources are required to submit visible emissions tests for VE readings using method 9 or a method 22, which is to determine fugitive dust and things of that nature if you're not familiar with those. There is a form that we have in MiEnviro for submitting visible emissions method 9. I'm in the testing environment and it was malfunctioning on me today, so I don't have one to show you. But if that was to happen, it's actually kind of a good thing, because if you had a method 9 test that you had to submit and you went into your as needed tab on your dashboard functional area and you scrolled all the way down and you scrolled all the way up and you're like, I've submitted these before. I know I had this VE9 submission that I could do, but it seems to be gone, and I have to get this submitted today. In that case, we would recommend that you go with the ROP General Compliance Report to upload that. What you are submitting it under isn't necessarily as important as the information that you're submitting. The requirement is that you show that you are in compliance with your method 9 readings, not that you submitted it under a specific report requirement. So in that case where you had it in the past and it just doesn't seem to be there right now, go to your ROP General Compliance Report and select Begin. This ROP General Compliance Report is like a catch-all report for all of those things that you have to submit, but there just isn't something specific that lets you submit for that particular requirement. So just like with all of our other submissions, you select begin form entry. I can add my permit numbers here. I don't have to, it's not a required. I'm going to briefly describe what I'm attaching, and I'm going to attach method 9 VE documents. Next thing is I can drag and drop, or I can just choose the file. I'm going to select my method 9 test results. In the comments, something I looked and there was no form for VE. I go to the next section, I'm reviewing it, and then I'm going to certify and submit this. And then I'm going to follow up with a call to my district inspector that says, hey, I submitted these under the general compliance report. I know there used to be a VE report, but it seems to be gone. And they'll work with you to get that back in. That's an internal to AQD. We have to go in and correct something. But you're still able to use this general compliance report to submit whatever you have to submit in order to make sure that you're compliant with your permit requirements. So, are there any questions about that?
Yeah, Dave, there's a question about method 9 in particular.
Okay.
And you're in a good spot to answer this as a district inspector as well. So the question is, if a permit requires like weekly or monthly method 9 testing, does Eagle want that form to be submitted after every test through the portal, or what would you recommend they do? Or should they reach out to their own district inspector to work out how often that should be uploaded? What are your thoughts on that?
I'd reach out to your district inspector to find out how often you would upload that. If you were a site that I was your inspector, I would just basically, my guidance to you would be, however often you submitted to them in the past, use that general compliance form to submit them with that same frequency.
Perfect, appreciate that. Yeah, let's continue on with the content and we'll circle back because there are still good questions coming in, but I want to make sure we get through all of our content here today as well, because some of these questions I know you will cover.
Okay. So we've gone through the system. We have uploaded a test plan, showed you where you go into the documents functional area to find your test plan approval letters. And it's going to the format. It's the format that's used now. It's going to have all of the information that you need in order to do your test. You're going to want to make sure that your test company has a copy of this, that your point of contact has a copy of it. We talked about going into the documents area so that you can find the test observations that your district inspector made when they were there that cover the operational side of testing, and the test observation evaluation that was done by the emissions measurement personnel that's going to cover the testing side of the evaluation that they observed that day. You're going to be able to you'll see, let me see if I have one. So you have your stack test details. This is not probably going to show up very, very big. So this is the details that go into the testing itself. So it's going to, what you're testing. This is part of the form that you're going to have uploaded to AQD that we're verifying through your data. That's then going to be submitted up to US EPA after the emissions measurement personnel and your district inspector have done the final reviews of your test report. Okay. So if there are no more questions about live in the MiEnviro piece, we can transition back over to the slides.
Yeah, there are some questions in here that might be good for you to stick in the system for a few more minutes, Dave, before we go back.
All right.
One question that is really, really good here is talking about flexible groups. So if you're a company that has done emissions reporting to us, you know that we no longer allowed, reporting groups, which a lot of people associated with flexible groups to report emissions for emissions reporting. Reminder, emissions reporting, training is on Thursday for those of you who fall into that category. But flexible groups are still part of permits. So a question came in about pollution control equipment is typically found in a flexible group, but the inventory developed, like I was just discussing for emissions reporting, last year were not allowed. So how would our flexible groups gonna still be in a drop down because they're associated through a permit in here, or how would a flexible group be entered in here as part of your emission unit?
So, and I don't know if it's a function of this particular test site doesn't have flexible groups. Jeremy, do you remember how we were handling that when we created this?
I don't remember it being discussed.
Okay. So what I would say is select the emission unit that goes with that particular flex group and start doing the methods across. Does that work for us? Because we're going to review the test and the results. So that should be able to do that since the flex groups are removed from the emissions reporting piece. Or
Right,
do we want to get back to them with better guidance?
yeah, remember that emissions reporting and your permits are two separate things, and there is the flexible groups that are in permitting, and we are in a testing environment. So as Dave pointed out, this test scenario that we built for this training session might not just have some flexible groups, but we'll get back to that person on there because that is a really great question about flexible groups being in your drop down. But good question there. Jeremy, did you want to add something to that? No? Okay. Okay, so while you're still in here, Dave, there are some more questions about filling out your test plan. So question is, if there are several regulations which apply to an emission limit or monitor parameter, do they have the ability to select multiple? So maybe it's part of the Michigan pollution control rules and it's part of a NSPS, or would they have to select those on two separate lines? Doesn't appear that you can select both, so would we recommend that they select it on two separate lines?
How would you like to see that, Jeremy? Do you want it separately?
Well, typically there's going to be an emission limit associated with a subpart from the feds, right? So if for some reason there was, you know, subpart whatever, and then part whatever 3 rules, could apply,
Mhm.
basically what I'm trying to get after there is that all these subparts have a lot of specialized conditions for testing, and I'm trying to figure out if the proposed testing meets all those requirements. So go with the subpart if there's multiple.
Excellent.
Perfect. Thanks for that clarification. Yeah, there's
Mhm.
it's definitely as what comes to my mind is a lot of the Title V facilities may have those multiple requirements listed in their ROP. And if you're a Title V source, you may be one that has multiple requirements for one emission limit, or you've got emission limits that are super similar to each other, that you may have to list out multiple ones of those. But really great question on that. A couple questions from people coming in about that they're not finding an associated pollutant or a unit of measure in there. If you're not seeing an option, I would suggest either trying searching differently or reach out to us if you're not seeing what you're looking for. I know this has quite a few in there, but it may not have everything. It may have 99.9% of everything that people are looking for, but reach out to either to Jeremy directly or to our Eagle-Air mienviro.michigan.gov if you're not seeing something that you are looking for in terms of a pollutant or a pollutant unit of measure.
Yeah,
Because we may
like-
not know that it's not in there.
Well, for example, when you're referencing trying to search for a different way, if you're used to looking for SO2, it's not in here. But if you're used to looking for sulfur dioxide, that is in there. So it's what you're going to type could potentially alter what your results are going to be.
Yes, good, really good point on that, Dave. You may just have to search a few different ways. Dave showed that you could look for particulate matter using PM or particulate, and it'll come up both ways. So, Jeremy, this might be a couple good questions here for you that are getting really specific to some things with testing. So questions were coming in about they've got multiple pollutants that they're testing for, and they've got maybe different limits that go out different stacks. And it may be hard to put in there altogether. Is that something that they could just upload an attachment to have a little bit more explanation on? Or how would you want them to do something like that?
Well, I mean, I don't completely know the specifics on this, but even if it's going out of multiple stacks, there should be one limit with one EU or maybe a flex group, to be determined. So, while the emissions are being tested at the stacks, we're testing something that produces emissions, so therefore the EU is the thing that should be listed in there. So I don't know if that completely answers the question, but whether it's one stack or many stacks, there should only be one EU. But however it is in the permit is how it should be, reflected in this chart here.
Okay. No, thanks for that. And if the person who asked that question, if we didn't answer your question, please reach out to us and we can help you fill out a test protocol submittal plan if you have questions on that. Last question here before we jump back into the slides, and then we'll get back to questions here. Is similar in the lines of that, Jeremy. I'm going to keep this one with you. So if the question is if there are several emission units that are directed to a single RTO for a destruction efficiency test, do you have to put each emission unit in a separate line item, even if it's a single destruction efficiency test?
Well, there again, it would be in a flex group or something like that. So you would enter the flex group or the emission unit. Again, it's kind of like the stat question, we're testing one control device, but really it's the sources of emissions that are the subject of the testing and the emission limit. So it'd be the EU/FG, but more to come on the FG portion, maybe.
Okay, good there. And I know I said one more question, but I lied. I'm actually going to do one more question.
Okay,
So sorry
all
about
right.
this. So
Keep 'em coming.
People were asking about if they submitted a test plan prior to the go live date, and they haven't received a paper copy approval letter. Are all approval letters moving forward after the go live date, Jeremy, going to be found in MiEnviro Portal?
Yes. And if we still have a couple test plans out there, those will be getting approval letters. And then we plan on just uploading them up to the site level at each of these sources so that they're housed in there.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Jeremy.
Mm-hmm.
So I know we're getting closer to time. I'm going to, Dave, we wanted to get back to the slides, right?
Yes, please.
So I'm going to go back and get to that. So I'm going to reshare my screen here with the slides, and hopefully I'm at the right spot for you, Dave. Let me know if I am not.
Yep, Nope, we're perfect.
Excellent.
So there's a lot of information that is available to the public via MiEnviro Portal on the Sitemap Explorer tile. So in the past, AQD used to post reports and permits, testing reports, things of that nature, inspections to public folders, and the public would go through they would go to different websites within Eagle, within AQD to find this information. All of this information is now going to be located in one spot. It's going to make it a lot easier for the public to be able to access information. So when you have a test observation report that you can see in your documents, the public can see that as well. Your final test reports that you submit to us, they're going to be able to see those. The protocol acceptance letters, things of that nature, is all open for the public to view in one spot. So next slide, please. So I just wanted to recap. We went over to basic understanding of the process of, when you're going to, of the test plan submittal, through protocol acceptance, through the test observations, through the final test report submittal, how to submit VE method 9 or method 22s to us, or what to use in case your test report submittal is not there. We went through the ins and outs of all of that. And hopefully at the end of this, you guys all have an understanding of how to submit those to AQD via MiEnviro Portal. But I want to make sure everybody understands, this isn't replacing the communications that we have. Like multiple times, Jeremy said they need to reach out to him. We don't envision MiEnviro Portal removing those communications between the sources and the AQD staff. We feel like we'll be communicating with you just as much, if not more, especially as we start through the initial going live here. So next slide, please.
Yeah, Dave, thanks for that recap on there and reminding everybody, our communication methods are still out there to reach out directly to your district inspector, to our technical programs unit staff for questions. And I did put in the chat, we have written instructions on submitting test plans to the Air Quality Division. You can find that on our emissions measurement page. So go ahead and take a look at that document as well. We've got other resources, including general user guide, and if you have questions on how to set up your account, look at your notifications, look at those things. Those are on our MiEnviro Portal for Air webpage. I'll throw that link here into the chat in just a minute as well. And you can also access all of that directly through your user account in MiEnviro. So last thing before we get back into questions, just wanted to remind you of our upcoming sessions. So on Thursday, January 16, we've got 2 sessions on emissions reporting. The first one starts at 10. If you haven't already registered for that and you're somebody who submits annual emission reports to us, go ahead and register for that so you can get that information again, since this will be the second year that you are reporting through our emissions reporting module through MiEnviro as well. And then a lot of questions coming in about ROPs and ROP certifications. We've got 3 sessions on ROPs next week, beginning on the 21st, going from initials, renewals, and life after ROP with modifications. So some of those questions that people were putting in about our M001 and our C001 forms. If you don't know what those are, that's totally okay. If you're a Title V source, you do. We will be discussing a lot more of that next week, how to change your responsible official, for example. So we are going to get back into questions here since we have a few more minutes left in our time together this afternoon. But I did just want to throw up some contact information in case you still have a question once we are done, or have a question that's very specific to your site that you want to ask those questions directly. For your general questions, you can send that to our eagle-air-MiEnviro@michigan.gov email address. You can reach out to Jeremy Howe, who our technical programs unit supervisor. His email is listed there on the screen, howj1@michigan.gov, and Dave Bowman as well, if you've got questions about how to submit just reports in general through the system. And your district inspector is also always a good contact with that. So Dave, this first question, I'm going to circle back to you. It's a little bit more of a general question in terms of submitting things to the air quality division since you're a district inspector. So the question was, if you have your district inspector came out for an inspection and they were requesting records, should that submittal be done through MiEnviro Portal or submitted to the district inspector how they had done it in the past, like via email or something like that?
I would say that talk to that district inspector as to how they would want to receive it. The conversations that we've had and the questions that I've answered for staff that have asked me that has been not to have you have sources submit via the portal, but just to submit to us as they traditionally have. And that when we write our report after reviewing the documents, that the pertinent information would be posted onto out there as a part of that report.
Great, thanks for that, Dave. Always good questions. And again, a reminder to reach out to your district inspector because they have lots of good information. So keeping with some of the kind of more technical questions, Jeremy, I'm going to pitch a couple of these over to you. Our questions on if something like an operating parameter is being reestablished for an emission unit through a test, should this site attach a document showing the new operating parameters based on the stack test results, or how should they submit that information?
Well, that should be in the PDF of the test report somewhere. So that would be probably proposed in the test plan and then memorialized in the acceptance letter. And therefore would need to be reported. So it would be in that.
Okay. Yeah, that's good information to know. So hopefully they can find that in their test approval letter.
Mhm.
So sticking just kind of to recap, I guess Dave, this one is going to go to you. So sorry, I'm bouncing back and forth, but Dave, this is going to go to you. It's a little bit, you talked about this, right, when you were showing us how to fill out the test plan and the final report. Just wanted to clarify that the expectation is for people to fill out the lines with the different pollutants, the methods, the limits all together, and then still upload their test plan via an attachment.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Awesome. Speaking of uploading those test plans, so there's a few questions in here about companies allowing access to a third-party stack test group. Typically there's groups out there who conduct stack testing for people who want them, and questions coming in about uploading things as well to Sedri. So Sedri is still separate from this portal, so please still upload any necessary things to Sedri as you would have in the past. I don't believe our system talks with Sedri at all. Jeremy, can you confirm that?
I'm sure it doesn't.
Okay. So just continue to upload things to Sedri as you would have in the past. And upload to us how we just trained you. Go ahead, Dave.
I would also point out that when you allow that third-party test company to be able to go in, you're giving them access to all of your ability to submit. So that you can't just give permission for Dave's test company to upload test plans and test reports. When you give Dave's test company a permission to upload something to your site in MiEnviro, you're giving me the option to fill out a 912 rule. You're giving me the option to submit MAPs. Be very, very aware that when you give someone in a role to do that for your company in MiEnviro Portal, you're not just giving them one thing, you're giving them everything.
Yes, good point. And there was a question in there about sensitive information such as enforcement related documents. So I did confirm that there is a little bit extra sensitivity and control on enforcement and consent order type of documents. But yeah, Dave is correct that you can grant a third party access for viewing and editing as two different options for roles. And by editor, I mean an administrator. You can type things in there, but you can always take those permissions away. Say you only test once every 5 years, and you want to give them access for a 6-month period and then take it away. That's totally okay as well. So that they're not in there for the 5 years. That's totally up to your site administrator, whoever is granting approval and access to your site on what you would want on that. Okay, so getting back into some of the other questions on here that aren't responsible official related, there are still quite a few questions coming in there on responsible officials, and we'll give a lot more information on that next week in our ROP training sessions. But I have a couple questions coming in about RADAs in particular. So I do want to address those questions. So question is, when submitting a RADA, is the relative accuracy and alternative relative accuracy what was measured during the RADA? The question is, they don't see a cell for RADA pass criteria such as the 20% is passing, which would be an equivalent to the emission limit portion of the form. So if they're not seeing that, would that fall under that alternative where you selected that box? Yes. Or maybe you guys want to, Jeremy, maybe you want to answer that question on the RADA and the alternative for passing a little bit more.
They need to
And I can
check.
rephrase.
Yeah, no, they need to check if it's for part 60 or for part 75, and then what the relative accuracy is. And then the alternate is any number of paths that can get there. It can mean different things and whatever. Just type in the number and we can look it up. You know, we review RADAs all the time. We know that there's alternates and where to find them. So.
Great, thanks for that, Jeremy. I think there was one other question in here about RADAs as well. That one's getting really specific. We're gonna follow up with that one, probably with that person on the side. So it seems very specific to their facility. So another more general question here about documents that are available to the public. Dave did cover that. I'm going to go back to that slide here, but just so to ease people's understanding of what is available to the public, your emails, if you're asking a question to Jeremy or one of his staff about something, your emails that to us are not going to be available to the public. Your test reports were always available to the public, so that isn't anything new. For anybody out there, your test reports were always available, as well as the protocol, the test plans. The protocol letters weren't necessarily available. They were all always FOIable, and the public could ask for all of that stuff. And it's just allowing for more transparency that stuff will be out there as well, but it won't be out there until it's made final and approved and looked at by all parties involved. So it's not necessarily that you submit it to us, it's automatically final. Things have to get processed on our end before they would be published for the public to see. So we are at the end of our time. I know we didn't get to all of the questions in here. Some were really specific to a few of your test sites. So we will follow up with you at the end of in the next few days. We will get to all of your questions if they weren't answered. Again, a last reminder of our upcoming sessions. I did put the links in the chat if you still want to register for the emissions reporting training or the ROP trainings coming up next week. And again, here is Jeremy and Dave's contact information. I want to thank both of them for being with us today and sharing their wealth of knowledge that they have. And I want to thank you for everyone on the line here for attending today's training. It was recorded and we will send it out to you in just a few days. So I hope everybody has a great rest of your afternoon, and we hope to see you back here on Thursday, January 16th for emissions reporting training. And if not, we will see you next week on the ROP trainings. Thanks and have a great afternoon.